Welcome to the Bulwark Podcast. I'm Charlie Sykes. This is the first opportunity that I have had in 2022 to talk with my good friend and colleague, Tim Miller. So happy New Year, Tim.
Happy New Year, Charlie. It's so good to be here. It's been such a good week on the pod. If people haven't listened, you did that email about how you were a little fatigued by the world, but it did not show this week. Crystal, was wry and awesome. I love Evan Osnos talking about
Yeah.
Bongino. Olivia Nuzzi's my friend talking about Dr. Oz. If people miss that, I've been enjoying you this week, and much more than the other podcasts I've been listening to.
Well, and then, of course, we had the All-Star yesterday, Susan Glasser from New Yorker and Julian Zelizer from Princeton on the anniversary. And, of course, we, saved the best for last,
Oh
Tim
yeah.
Miller. Hey, so, Tim, I have to mention this. Today is our birthday. Today is the third anniversary of the full website of the Bulwark. And as I said in my newsletter this morning, I think that, in this particular era, we have to count years in dog years. So we're not toddlers. I think we're 21 years old based on that. I mean, it feels like it's been 21 years. But so the morning of January 7th, 2019, we launched the website. You can see a picture of what it looked like. We've come a long way from that. And Bill Crystal, JVL, and I did the very first official Bulwark podcast in this big conference room, Cyril Longwell's office. We
Okay.
did the very first official podcast.
I don't think I listened to that one.
Well, you will now. Listen to this. Welcome to the first real official edition of the Bulwark Podcast. I'm Charlie Sykes.
What were those two podcasts we did before? Those were good.
Yeah, they were sort of bonuses, weren't they?
Geez, just throws the first two podcasts under the bus. I mean,
but now it's real.
Let's go ahead. You're the editor. You're the editor-in-chief, Charlie.
I'm the editor-in-chief, and you're editor-at-large, which is like the
editor-at-large.
perfect title,
Yeah.
And then there's Jonathan Last.
No real responsibility.
Jonathan Last, who is going to be the experiential director for the new Bulwark website.
Director of Special Operations.
Director of Special Operations.
I like that.
Well, for those of you who've been wondering what was going on, today is the full launch, not just of the Bulwark podcast, but of the Bulwark website. It is fully operational. The Death Star is up. And, I look back on that, and you know what I'm most struck by, Tim?
What's that?
How much darker my hair was back then. I mean, it is really amazing. They show those pictures of, presidents when they come into office and how old they look later.
Yeah.
I kind of feel that.
I felt that way about Charlie. If this makes you feel any better, I do not, because this person is sensitive and might be a listener. So I felt that way about one of the television hosts that I was watching yesterday. So I think that it's been a long 4 years, 5 years for everybody. And, this happens when you reach a certain age. And I thought it was more stark for this person that was going around the internet than for you.
Well, okay, we'll talk about that a little bit later. But anyway, again, happy anniversary to the Bulwark. What's really kind of remarkable about it, and I've mentioned this before, is that when we launched this, we really had no way of knowing whether it would last for more than 3 months. It was kind of a stopgap measure because they'd murdered the Weekly Standard just like basically 2 or 3 weeks earlier. It was on December 14th, 2018. And it was kind of a like let's have a placeholder for a while until, the successor will rise up. And yet here we are 3 years later. And I think it's safe to say that none of us had any idea what the Bulwark would become, the kind of people we would attract, the group of contributors, the writers, people like you, Tim, or we'd have people like James Carville writing for us, the all of it, the whole suite of the podcasts, having people like Mona Charen and, JVL and the newsletters and what Cyril Longwell has been able to put together, Amanda Carpenter, everybody. It's really been, I was going to say, one of the most extraordinary professional experiences I've ever had, but it's definitely the most extraordinary professional experience I've ever had. So thanks.
For sure. Yeah, I guess I would go so far as to say I was bearish. So when people hear my pessimism about the state of things, take this as a proof point that sometimes my pessimism proves wrong. Sarah was a friend of mine and asked if I'd help kind of write from time to time or participate. Yeah. And obviously you guys were my people spiritually. And so I said, what the hell, and wanted to participate and chime in from time to time. And I had no idea that it would take off like this. I agree with you. I thought maybe it was there was no market for something like this. There seemed to be very little political market for us, if we're being honest. So I was skeptical of the media marketplace, and it's just been really wonderful. And so I'm so happy that you guys took the plunge and had the courage to do it, and the willingness to put yourselves on the line after the Standard, and that Sarah had the willingness to sort of take the risk and jump in, and it really has been wonderful. And I do think that we've got even maybe bigger things coming in 2022. So
I think we do, and of course, one of the propositions that was being tested is there an audience for non-tribal media? And I
yeah.
think there was real grounds for skepticism, and because if you're not at one extreme or the other, do you fall between the stools? And so this question of was there is there some space in the center right, center left, where we could do all of this? And it was by no means obvious that it would be a success. So anyway, thank you so much for all the supporters. We appreciate it so much.
Yeah, and one last thing on this point, just the ability to have discussion, right? I think that there are so very few places to just work these things out and have discussions, because everybody, is looking over their shoulders, worried if their audience or their staff or whatever is gonna, revolt if they do some wrong speak. And so there was one of while you were gone, one of the podcasts I did was with Perry Bacon. For people who didn't,
It's
I'm sure might be
fantastic.
some folks who don't listen when Charlie's here, which I get. They're here for the big man, but. The feedback I got on that was actually mostly positive about where the times we disagreed, right? And it
Right.
was people that was like, I'm so happy to hear cordial disagreement. We a little back and forth about the student loan issue and a couple other things. And so, anyway, I think that has been another thing that's been really gratifying about this, that people do want that, and hopefully we can have a little bit more of that back and forth in the coming year.
I mean, a lot of people try to pigeonhole us as. I mean, I think there's probably a group of conservatives that think we suffer from Trump derangement syndrome, and there's no question about it. We have been
I'm
very
deranged.
consistently, never Trump, and now never again Trump. But I really think that it was JVL who put his finger on, I think, what the real secret formula was going to be, which was that we were going to tell you what we actually thought. We
Yeah.
we weren't going to, and I think this is part of the problem that in this era, there's so many people that feel the need to put their head down. Well, I can't say this, or what, the donors will be upset if I say something bad about the Orange God King, and then I think that contributed to the sort of the same old strain, some of the hyper tribalism of much of the media, and we just basically, I think part of it was because the Weekly Standard had imploded so horrific that
And because we
a
didn't
lot
think it
of
was gonna last 3 months, why not
well,
just say what we think?
exactly. It was like we were all out of fucks to give. And so it was like, okay, whatever. We've kind of been through that, so let's just lay it all out. And I remember in the first few months, we were sitting around, and I remember maybe it was like the first month or the second month or something, and Jim Swift was saying, whatever happens here, we left it all on the field. It was kind of amazing because we'd only been in operation for a month, and yeah, we got off to a great start. So anyway, thanks for all the listeners, the contributors. Thank you especially to the members of Bulwark Plus, people who have come forward and joined the community. We appreciate it immensely. Okay, so I DM'd you last night, Tim, just so people
We've
know.
received a bounty from the heavens, Charlie.
I used the
Manna.
word bounty from that. I said, Tim, I cannot tell you how much I am looking forward to, this podcast, because we were in the midst of wallowing in the Ted Cruz prostration, his grovel, this extraordinary experience. And again, Ted Cruz is no stranger to groveling. He's done it before. I mean, remember, even after his wife was
Mhm.
insulted, he kind of decided that he was going to keep his head down, maybe to get reelected as a senator. Well, he's reelected, and so he was called on the carpet by Tucker Carlson to abjectly apologize for having said mean things about the people who assaulted the Capitol. He had referred to them as terrorists. And Tucker Carlson, well, he basically, begged forgiveness and went on Tucker Carlson and apologized, and then apologized harder. And then, having thoroughly humiliated himself, he then tweeted out his own self humiliation. I mean, I read in the news that this is so bad. This is so bad. Even Lindsey Graham's going, man. Have some pride. Even Lindsey Graham.
If you haven't seen it, we do need a content warning here. I'm blushing right now. I do think there's a sort of a masochistic kink associated with this humiliation and what Ted is doing. I mean, it is uncomfortable. It's extremely uncomfortable.
Okay, so that's why we need a little bit of a content warning, because let's play about 2 minutes
Lord, 2 minutes.
A United States senator going before the throne of Tucker Carlson, prostrating himself, groveling, reaching deep into his stores of obsequiousness. Here is Ted Cruz, the man who once wanted to be president of the United States and probably still does.
You called this a terror attack when by no definition was it a terror attack. That's a lie. You told that lie on purpose, and I'm wondering why you did.
Well, Tucker, thank you for having me on. When you aired your episode last night, I sent you a text shortly thereafter and said, listen, I'd like to go on because the way I phrased things yesterday, it was sloppy and it was frankly dumb. And
I don't buy that. Whoa. I don't buy that. Look, I've known you a long time, since before you went to the Senate. You were a Supreme Court contender. You take words as seriously as any man who's ever served in the Senate. And every word you repeated that phrase. I do not believe that you used that accidentally. I just don't.
So, Tucker, as a result of my sloppy phrasing, it's caused a lot of people to misunderstand what I meant. Let me tell you what I meant to say. What I was referring to are the limited number of people who engaged in violent attacks against police officers. Now, I think you and I both agree that if you assault a police officer, you should go to jail. That's who I was talking about. And the reason the phrasing was sloppy is I have talked dozens, if not hundreds of times. I've drawn a distinction. I wasn't saying that the thousands of peaceful protesters supporting Donald Trump are somehow terrorists. I wasn't saying the millions of patriots across the country supporting President Trump are terrorists. And that's what a lot of people have misunderstood that comment.
Wait a second, but hold on. What you just said doesn't make sense. So if somebody assaults a cop, he should be charged and go to jail. I couldn't agree more. We have said that for years.
Beg harder.
But that person's still not a terrorist. How many people have been charged with terrorism on January 6th? Like, why'd you use that word? You're playing into the other side's characterization that, as Joe Kent just explained, allows them to define an entire population as foreign combatants. And you know that. So why'd you do it?
So, Tucker, let me answer you directly. The reason I use that word, for a decade, I have referred to people who violently assault police officers as terrorists. I've done so over and over and over again. If you look at all the assaults we've seen across the country, I've called that terrorism over and over again. That being said, Tucker, I agree with you. It was a mistake to say that yesterday, and the reason is what you just said.
Forgive me.
Oh, my God.
The self-flagellation goes on and on.
I was cringing, just waiting for him to just, give me the whip again, Tucker.
Just,
give
please,
me the
sir,
whip.
I have another one. Okay, so it is important to point out, though, that Tucker's right when he says that it wasn't just a one-off. It wasn't an off-the-cuff remark. Ted Cruz had used the term over and over and over again. He did the day of the attack. He did, 2 days afterwards. I mean, he's done it multiple times. So, he knew what he was doing. And yet, when he's confronted by a talk show host on Fox News, this member of the United States Senate does not have is unwilling to stand by his own words, things that he'd said, and said, yeah, that's what I said. And I was right. And let me repeat that. Instead, it's the fawning. It's the, oh, Tucker, please, can I come on your show? I'm so sorry. I mean, Tim, I'm sorry just to go off on all of this. You really see where the power is. I mean, you look at the split screen. There's a United States senator, former presidential candidate sitting there, and there's a talk show host, and you know who holds the whip, right? I mean, there's no question about it. I mean, it's kind of an iconic moment because if you are in Trump world, you're going to have these moments of self-humiliation. But as I wrote this morning, I mean, think about it for a second. He and Lindsey Graham are United States fucking senators. They are powerful men, right? I mean, even if they weren't senators, you'd expect just a modicum of self-respect. I mean, just a little bit of personal pride, a trace of dignity that might make them say, okay, I'm going to draw a line. I'm not going to cross. But no, there's Ted Cruz saying, beat me for having offended the gods of Fox News.
Yeah, I mean, I do think we're joking and it's funny, but I do think that there's a compulsive need to be humiliated by Ted Cruz. I don't know that there's any other explanation. I mean, the way that he behaved in front of Donald Trump after he insulted his wife, and if you go back to what remember his roommate Craig Mazin is the writer for Chernobyl and like wrote about Ted in college, and he would get caught playing with his little guy,
Yeah.
in the dorm room, and it's almost like he wanted to get caught, and he was on the Bush campaign. Always the most. Stuart Stevens has a good rant about this, about how he was the mocked one, and I do think that there is kind of this need to be whipped and to be told that I can do better. I can do better, dear leader. So I think that there's some psychological stuff that he needs to
Okay,
go
okay,
through.
but let yeah,
Go
okay,
ahead.
go on.
No, no. The other thing though is to the power arrangement. It's bizarre that's the senator in that position, not a staffer, right?
Right.
And he what it demonstrates, I think on the anniversary of January 6th, is that the power is not just within Tucker, which is true in that dynamic, but the power is still in the most rabid, deranged members of the MAGA mob. And all of these guys have to grovel before them. Even Donald Trump at times, as we saw with his comments about the vaccines and the boosters recently, right? And Ted Cruz, I had a sense this was coming because little tease for Monday. I've been in addition to just really enjoying your podcast this week, I've been suffering
Okay.
through Steve Bannon's, and that guy
Oh,
puts out a lot of shit. I mean, it's just hours
I wanna
upon
talk to you
hours
about
of
that.
stuff he does.
Yeah.
But they were filleting Cruz, him and Marge Taylor Greene, and like all of these just gutter dwellers that go on Bannon's podcast. And so this was yesterday, and so when I saw it last night,
Almost like cancel culture. I mean, if you didn't know better,
right?
right?
Almost like cancel culture. You would think so. If you don't say the right thing, if you don't say
Right.
whatever the new
Yeah.
MAGA woke orthodoxy is, then you're going to get canceled.
Yeah.
You don't if you don't have the right language, right? If you don't
These are
use
the
the right
words you are
term.
allowed to use. These
Yeah,
are the
right.
terms, and if you use these terms, you're canceled. We're going to fillet you.
Nice
So,
rook move.
y
But it's interesting though, when you're listening to that, it's a nice reminder, that there's this sense to minimize like kind of what's happening on the in these environs, these extreme MAGA environs. But there's still the ones running the show, and it's like on this random podcast he gets filleted, and then that night on Tucker Carlson, and then the next night there he is on the show with his ball gag.
So here's the other, like a paradox here, right? Because one of the things that the real marker of Trump style politics, this new style politics that others are trying to emulate. I mean, you see it with Ron DeSantis and Josh Hawley, is that politicians are supposed to be strong, right? I mean, they're supposed to project strength. They're supposed to fight, right? They never admit they're wrong. They never, ever, ever apologize. And yet, here's Ted Cruz saying, I want to be part of this world. And the way that I'm part of this world is basically to strip naked, pull my forelock, and, prostrate myself on Fox News. Please forgive me. So, this is the paradox that it's a world where nobody ever apologizes. You are the strong men, you are the manly men. And here's Ted Cruz wanting to desperately get into and be accepted by that world by what? Crawling on his belly.
Yeah, and well, it's because he wants to become president. I mean, there's another news item about Ted while you were gone, and he did an interview with like some 15-year-old conservative kid's blog or something, where he told the kid that he thought that historically the guy that finishes in second, in a presidential primary has a pretty good shot the next time, and so
Good luck
he
with
still
that.
thinks that, and I think that he saw his life flash before his eyes. But this was just another example of why he will never be he will never be the Ubermenschen, right? And so I think in this instance, like this was a survival. He saw his entire standing within the MAGA base, potentially dissipate. And I think that this is an important thing to understand is why was it? Why was this, an existential threat to him? And it's because 40%, maybe more, of the Republican primary voters see themselves as kinsmen to the people that stormed the Capitol on 1/6. And so in a sense, he was revealed to have called his own voters terrorists, right? Because they have all wrapped themselves in a cloak that unites the people that showed up on that mall that day to the biggest MAGA supporters. This is the most disturbing part about where we are in the 1-year anniversary from this, is that there remains a significant and strong and powerful base that is pro what happened on 1/6. I thought that Bill made a good point on your podcast on Monday. Not 90%, right? Like there's still a group of the Republicans that are outraged by this and that the Democrats should be trying to reach, but a very significant and powerful bloc that liked what happened. And if you want to be in good standing with them, you have to continue to go along and play act that you also think that the country was stolen from us and that it's worth
Well, that's true.
protesting, and
But
that's scary because that's what got us 1/6 in the first place.
It is scary. It also just strikes me how much they all despise one another. I mean, they're afraid of their base, but they also despise their base. You know that Donald Trump and others and Tucker Carlson demand this kind of self abasement, but we use the word despise, but they have to say this is pathetic what you have to do. Okay, I want one more point before I want to come back.
You don't think Donald Trump would just trade his base for Barack Obama's base in a second?
Oh, absolutely,
In a
absolutely.
second.
So one last point here. It is worth remembering that here you have this United States senator who is doing this cringe performance with Tucker Carlson. You are right, Tucker. I am so sorry, Tucker. What I mean to say, Tucker. Yes, Tucker. Is that Tucker Carlson right now is really at the epicenter of some of the most vicious disinformation. In fact, so bad that our good friends, Jonah Goldberg and Steve Hayes quit Fox because they didn't want to be associated with what Carlson is doing right now. You might have had Chris Wallace, who didn't explicitly say it, but he was troubled by it. And then you have this, I don't know, if people haven't seen it, John Ward from Yahoo, really top-notch reporter, really dismantles, Tucker's attempts to retcon January 6th. He's been arguing, that all of this was a setup, a trap by shadowy forces in the government. I mean, Tucker Carlson has basically moved into the space that used to be reserved for the Alex Jones conspiracy theorists. And John Ward does this deep dive, and he concludes that the examination shows that Carlson makes alarming claims that are built on flimsy or inaccurate evidence, or does not consider evidence that contradicts his narrative. Ultimately, he uses legitimate concerns, about FBI abuses of power, to weave a story about January 6th that ends up making claims that are not supported by facts. So this guy is a dangerous liar. And instead of keeping him at arm's length, what you see is people like Ted Cruz beating a door so that he can take a knee. And that's also dangerous. So can we talk about your Not My Party this week?
Yeah.
Which is excellent. And people
Well, actually, before we get to just one thing on the
okay.
Tucker John Ward article, because I think it's worth pointing out, and because it's so widespread right now, and that is this key theory that you are talking about these dark shadowy forces. The basis behind that, right, is this notion that the FBI had informants inside the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys, right, and that there were a couple of guys. There's one guy that they keep pointing out, a tall guy in a MAGA hat, who's saying, charge the Capitol, and then some people around him are saying, you're a Fed. And so the theory that's being put out by Tucker's show is that really what happened on January 6th is that there were a bunch of peaceful protesters, great patriots who were just there because they were concerned about the election fraud that, Hugo Chavez and the Chinese had committed somehow, unclear exactly how. And that the only reason that the violence happened is because a couple feds egged them on because they wanted to get them. It was a trap, as you said. And this is something that Ward takes seriously in his article. And as he goes through it, it's like, like many things on Tucker's Alex Jones InfoWars nightly program, there's no actual evidence for it, right? It's all circumstantial. And in fact, the basis of this comes from this guy Darren Beatty, who is a white nationalist sympathizer that got fired for the Trump administration for being too friendly with the white nationalists. Think about how friendly you got to be to get fired from
too bigoted for MAGA world.
Just a little too out there in the open, Darren. Like, we like to keep these things under wraps on our alt accounts. source. You were being a little too brazen. And so not exactly a credible source yet. This is emanating from. But Ward takes it seriously, asks the DOJ about it. DOJ doesn't comment. So, we don't really know. Who knows, right? Government does stupid things. It's possible that there was some stupid government informant doing something stupid that day. I'm not completely closed to the idea. But the problem here is that this is how conspiracies work, right? This is how Alex Jones works. You throw out well, maybe it was the feds. And then everybody who's watching, they don't think logically about that, right? They're like, oh, see, we don't have to take responsibility. The feds did it. And so then you know what happens? Ron DeSantis threw out this theory yesterday. 3 Senate candidates, Eric Greitens, Blake Masters in Arizona, I forget the third one, all threw out this theory yesterday. And when you just step back and think about it, it's like, okay, well, let's take this seriously. Let's say there were 2 FBI informants in this crowd of thousands who were trying to egg people on. Does that in any way make the actions of January 6th better? The fact that they were gathering a mob, to interrupt the peaceful transition of power, the fact that the sitting president was lying about fraud, the fact that hundreds of people then started stabbing police officers. I mean, I said this on Twitter, like, imagine putting 2 feds inside the women's march. And they start looking around at the ladies in their pink pussy hats and their male allies and saying, guys, we need to storm the White House. We need to storm the White House now that Donald Trump is in there. We need to interrupt, the inauguration. The ladies would be looking at these feds like, what? Who are these fucking crazy people? They would be calling the cops on the feds, saying, get these guys out of here. So this whole notion, this whole conspiracy is farcical. It's like it's based on the idea that that just having 2 guys in a crowd saying let's charge the Capitol and commit a domestic terrorist attack is enough to make all of the sheep around them go along with it, right? So it's a nonsensical theory, but all you just need is a kernel, in the conspiratorial world, and then people don't have to deal with the ramifications.
Well, and also, Ron DeSantis, who's supposed to be the not crazy Trump,
Right.
he's now buying into all of it. So, I
On
mean,
the
the
anniversary.
way that it spreads out is remarkable. Okay, just since we're on all of this, because I got a lot of email and reaction over the last couple of days. The other thing that has just become huge on the right is the whataboutism that, okay, something happened on January 6th, but where were you guys when there were all of these hundreds of BLM riots that destroyed billions of dollars in property and all of the cops and everything? And this is one where you take a deep breath. And 2 points to be made. Number one, we were denouncing those riots. We were on this podcast and writing, saying that, you know what? Everybody needs to denounce this violence. Biden needs to denounce this violence. Democrats need to make it clear that violence. But also, that's point number one. But point number two is that it is fundamentally and categorically different to have random violence or even serious violence in downtown Portland, Oregon, where they are, burning a Starbucks, or in downtown Kenosha, which is horrible and needs to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. But there's a fundamental difference between that and an attempt to overthrow a presidential election, a concerted attempt to stop the Congress from certifying the free, fair, secure election of the President of the United States. And the thing about January 6th is it's not just some random act of violence. And you need to see it in the whole context of this attempt to propagate the big lie, undermine the election, force the Congress to do something that was, clearly, anti-democratic. And yet somehow we're supposed to think that, well, yes, but somebody threw a bottle through a Best Buy in Kenosha and burned it down, which is, fuck those guys. But people, not the same thing. And I guess we're in this space where, who are you talking to? Because we weren't minimizing that.
Yeah, and this is part of this sort of right-wing echo chamber, right? This is why these guys get radicalized, because that's all they're talking about on the Bannon pod and all these places every day, right? Is look at what happened and nut picking the worst actors from all of these riots. And I think that we do a lot of mocking of our old friends over at National Review on this podcast. So I do sometimes want to shout them out when somebody does something well. I think Kevin Williamson, had a turn of phrase that really put this, whataboutism to bed when he said there is a difference between a coup d'etat and a coup de target. Right.
Yeah.
Like there is an actual difference when there's a violent attempt to interrupt the peaceful transition of power. This is a category difference from the kinds of street violence that we've had all throughout history, which is not good and should be condemned. But, there was nobody out there waving Joe Biden flags outside the Kenosha Best Buy, right? It's a category difference than people climbing the Capitol, the United States Capitol, taking down the United States flag and putting up a Donald Trump flag. And you can just imagine the counterfactual. This is why I always get so frustrated. My blood pressure gets up when I hear this argument. You can imagine the opposite counterfactual. Instead of comparing this to the BLM riots, why don't we compare this to if Obama had lost in 2008 and a mob of black people charged the Capitol and started attacking cops and climbing the Capitol and putting up a Black Panthers flag and, a Barack Obama fuck your feelings flag. Do we feel like Ben Shapiro would be whatabouting that? Or do we think that their tone would be a little different? I think we know the answer.
Well, what's interesting is in their world, there is this huge shadowy threat because that's their mental image of domestic violence, right? It tends to be black. It's Antifa. It's Black Lives Matter. And look, there were people who certainly were, fed into it. I mean, how many times have I seen this picture now of the CNN reporter, standing at one of the demonstrations saying, mostly peaceful demonstration, and behind him there's this huge fire. Well, of course, people are going to mock that. But okay, so you talk about the right-wing ecosystem for your sins, Tim Miller.
Yeah,
you have immersed yourself in the Steve Bannon War Room podcast.
I have.
Tell me about this.
I have.
Talk to me about it.
It is.
What the hell?
People are gonna have to read the article on Monday because I'm sure if you're on Twitter, hopefully some of these listeners aren't on Twitter and punishing themselves. Yeah. Occasionally, you get a little clip, right, of the Steve Bannon podcast. It pops up.
That's what I see. Yeah.
It'll be Matt Gaetz on there, or some other cretin, and they'll say something stupid about the vaccine or about the 2020 election, and they'll get dunked on Twitter, and then it goes away. I didn't even really realize this. The guy is prodigious. He's putting out 3 hours a day. Mm-hmm. 3 hours. He's live on video. He wears the same shirts every day. He's like, his face is necrotizing. I mean, he looks like he has cirrhosis, but yet he has energy. I don't know what he's doing back there to stay so high energy, but he's doing 3 hours a day, and they've created an entire kind of world that has catchphrases and an alternate reality, much focus on the 2020 election. Still, Biden is illegitimate, the illegitimate regime, and the vaccines, all the things that you'd expect. But the biggest takeaway I have is just when you spend time there, is how consuming it is, right? And so on its face, and this is kind of related to my Not My Party this week, on its face, it seems ridiculous and mockable, right? Because the cast of characters, it's like the Star Wars Cantina doesn't even do this justice. The cast of characters they have on this podcast. I mean, like, they bring on people like, where did this person buy their clothes? And they look ridiculous. But underneath it is a consistent drumbeat about how the country's been stolen, and about how all of the elites across the board, the Biden regime, big tech, big media, big pharma, are out to get them. And you can see how people get radicalized by this. You can, you get an insight into how 1/6 happens. So we'll kind of leave it there, and I'll leave kind of the specifics for next week, but that's my sense for it.
How big is the audience? I mean, so how many people watch this? Like, what's huge?
I mean, so it's if you look at the Apple charts on podcasts, it's always in the top 10. It's around. You had Osnos on this week. It's around Bongino. Yeah. It's a little below Bongino on the podcast charts. It's below like Ben Shapiro and Pod Save America and The Daily, and a couple of the biggest ones. But it's in the top 10. And then he also streams online. He streams on Rumble. They've got a cable channel now that they're on. So I don't know how many people get on all those things, but they claim that they've had 125 million downloads. And you put it all together, I mean, it's not nothing. I mean, it's not Tucker Carlson numbers, I don't think, but it's big. It's big numbers.
So as reckless and conspiratorial and Alex Jones like as Tucker Carlson is, this is one sort of, step over. Did I hear that Steve Bannon is now telling his listeners that they were going to reverse the results in Arizona? That they were going to go into Arizona and get Arizona to take back its
Yes.
electoral votes?
Yes, 1-6 is still ongoing on this podcast. It's still ongoing. And in multiple states. There's a big fight coming apparently in Pennsylvania over 2020, not
No,
2024.
I understand this. But my head is sort of dropping because I just remember the number of times though that we hear these ideas that are you sort of roll your eyes because they are so stupid, they are so crazy, and then they become, I mean, I won't say real, but they become consequential. So, for example, I mean, I actually remember, I'm sure you do as well. First time you heard in late last year that Louis Gohmert, who is arguably the stupidest member of Congress, there's a lot of competition, who was filing a lawsuit saying that Mike Pence should overturn the election. And everybody regarded that as complete lunacy. And yet now we know this was at the center of the president of the United States' entire plan to stay in power and overthrow the election. I mean, it starts off with this is the most ludicrous piece of bullshit you ever heard, and then it's like, no, they're actually going to do this. So when I hear you talk about Steve Bannon talk about reversing the electoral vote from 2020, we're like, okay, this is really really stupid. But in their world, they're serious about it, or at least they want their listeners to think they're serious about it.
There's some people that are serious about it, right? It's sometimes it's hard to tell,
Yeah, I
right?
know.
Like to the extent how much some of these guys are in on the joke, and sometimes it does seem like well, anyway, I'll let the article speak for itself
Okay.
on a few times where it seems like people
All
are
right.
in
Come
on
on
the
in.
joke. But I think that your broader point, and this goes to like what the theme of my not my party
Yeah.
was this week, right? Which was that these guys on their face, it all seems so farcical. And
Right.
that is true about Bannon's podcast. It is true about Louis Gohmert. It was true last year about the Horns guy and Rudy and the Kraken and all of it. I mean, it just all seems so
Right.
ridiculous. And obviously you have some useful pundits running cover for them, your Ross Douthat's of the world, telling everybody, no, guys, this is stupid, right? Like you don't have to worry about this. And so you bring that all together. And what I see is I think that people who are trying to live normal lives, right? Like people who do not do Charlie Sykes' podcast every day. Bad choice for those people. But instead they're just listening to sports talk or whatever, that they want. They're trying to get separation from all this. I can understand how those people, do not share our alarm, right? Not, and I'm not excusing the Ross Douthat's of the world. I'm talking about regular folks because
Right.
they
Right.
look at all this and it's just like,
Normal people.
yeah, and it's just like this can't be the thing that brings down this
Right.
great country. Like this just can't
It's too
be.
stupid.
It's
It's
too
too
fucking
stupid.
stupid.
Right. It's absurd. And see, that's the point that I think is very powerful when it came away was that the stupid can distract us from how dangerous it is. Right. I mean, it's like you have a line where you say our brains have trouble processing all of this. The things that feel like obvious jokes are actually our era's version of the uprising that seems so serious in history books. So
Yeah.
that's the cognitive dissonance. How can you think that there's a coup, an attempt to overthrow the government when it's just, blousy, jaundiced podcasters or brain damaged pig farmers or some neckbeard who's decided that the word pizza, is code for child trafficking. It's just too dumb, too crazy. And yet, they're still there. They're going to try it again. And we
Yeah,
need
and
it.
I don't want to compare, these racist neckbeards to, our great founders, but just for purpose of a thought exercise, you don't think the folks in Britain thought that about the guys throwing tea into the sea? You know what I
No.
mean? Like, I think that is the hard part here, right? Is that there always is a ridiculous element to this. It's so in our face now.
Yeah.
And
No.
I'm not yet a dad that is doing all the World War I reading and stuff, but this was what all the Hitler people say, right? Like they went over and met with him. He gets out of jail and he's like, this guy is too dumb, right? And so again, it's not saying that Trump is Hitler or that these guys are the Tea Party, but the point is that there's always a sense of ridiculous to it. It's just right now, because of our access, because of social media, 24-hour news cycle, we see it all so closely that, and you look at it and you're like, this is just a joke. Like these are just people letting off some steam, or these people are too stupid to do anything. And that's just not true, right? Like there are enough weak parts within our system that even dumb people can exploit them. And so, anyway, that a year out, this is my big takeaway from this is I think that there are millions of people who take all this stuff very seriously. There are another set of millions of people that are incentivized by their desire to keep power. I'm talking about the politicians, your conservative ink pundits, to minimize it and to kind of play pretend and to kind of go along with it, but know that they're the adults, and put together that's a powerful force, and it's almost half the country.
And that's what makes it so difficult to fight against this, to oppose it. So, just shifting gears only slightly.
Sure.
So, what did you think of Biden's speech yesterday?
Yeah, I thought it was really good, and we were giving him some trouble on the Next Level for Bulwark Plus subscribers. Maybe not giving him trouble. That's not the right word. We're just talking about how frustrating it's been, I think, for the last year. That Biden has gone out of his way, I think, to live up to his campaign promise of where possible, looking for comity. He has not taken gratuitous dunks on Donald Trump, with very, very few exceptions. He's not at all acted like Trump acted, of course. He's tried to find bipartisanship on, at least COVID and infrastructure, not on BBB. I'm sure that your Peter Myers of the world wish there were, a few more olive branches that were put onto the hill. But in the grand scheme of things, particularly as compared to his predecessor, he's at least attempted, to try to take down the temperature. He's got no credit for it. No credit. And he's just gotten, and the whole time, the right.
So it's asymmetrical completely.
Yeah, it's asymmetrical. The right can just attack him mercilessly and have chants that's like, fuck Joe Biden, and going on in stadiums.
Yeah.
And if like Jen Psaki says one mean thing, then Fox is running, 24-hour, coverage on how, this guy was supposed to be, uniting the country. This doesn't seem unifying to me. So he's been sort of stuck. And I feel like as we got to the 1-year anniversary, it was important for him to, once again kind of reanimate the other key point from his campaign, which is that these guys are a threat. They are dangerous. And we need to recognize the danger if we are going to heal. And I thought that he did a good job of just laying out that starkly, that the rule of law doesn't just matter, when you win, that there are broader principles at stake here. I don't know that it's going to move the needle for him politically, but I think it was laying the groundwork for what needs to be a year of a two-part message that is very clear-eyed about the threats that are coming from the right, while also, trying to get their stuff together and focusing on what are a few things they can pass that make people's lives better that they can campaign on. Those have got to be the two planks that they focus on this year, and he did one well.
He really has to push this speech. Making this one speech is not going to make a difference here. But again, this is the kind of thing that makes your head hurt. I think it was one of the reporters, at the White House asking Jen Psaki, so has Joe Biden failed to heal the nation because we're still so divided? So it's like he gets
someone
the blame
asked Biden
for
that
it.
too. Biden was asked that.
Yeah. But it was interesting with the reaction to his speech. I mean, this is from a party that is, in lockstep with Donald Trump, who keeps issuing these completely demented, deranged statements. Representative Scott Fitzgerald, who used to be a state senator here from Wisconsin, a big Trump guy, issues a tweet yesterday saying, the president, Biden, created more division, not unity, in his speech today. This isn't leadership. This is a theater to distract from this administration's failures. And my friend Jim Wigderson, who used to be the editor of Right Wisconsin, said, you know what's divisive, Scott? Voting to overturn an election after a violent insurrection at the Capitol trying to accomplish the same thing. Congressman Fitzgerald sided with the domestic terrorists in President Trump's coup attempt over the people of Wisconsin. So, I mean, it is rich. It is just pounding irony to death with hammers for these guys to say, you're saying mean things? You're dividing the country? The people who actually supported the coup? I mean, fuck those people. Okay, you said
and
two
Nuge
things.
was doing this? Ugh.
So, your boy Joe Manchin.
Yeah.
We haven't talked since Joe Manchin pulled the plug on BBB.
Country Joe.
Go.
This is probably my least popular take right now, but I think that Democrats need to listen to Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin, for people who watch the day to day of this, has probably done some things that are hiding the ball and not acting in good faith, and he deserves to be criticized on the inside the beltway stuff. But in the big picture, he's laid out some clear guidelines for how Democrats can move forward. He does not want these half baked plans that kind of hide the ball on the cost, because it's like, oh, we're going to fund all of this for 2 years and then hope that everybody keeps extending it. He wants to pick a few programs and fully fund them. I think that's right, by the way, on both the policy and the politics. And he offered on, I think you look at the example on energy stuff. He said that he didn't want things that were going to punish polluters. Not good. Disagree with him on that. But he said that he would support clean energy, tax credits, incentives, research. He stood by that, right? And so the Democrats changed the BBB to meet those specifications. And unfortunately for progressives who want more, they're going to have to change the rest of the BBB to meet the specifications he laid out. And if Joe Manchin ends up killing a bill and getting to go back to West Virginia and saying, guys, the far left wanted all of these things, and I said no, but I'm going to vote yes for clean energy tax credit and parental leave, fully funded parental leave, and one other thing, and we're going to pay for it by taxing people over 500K. Boy, I think that's a good campaign platform to run on for Democrats nationwide. It helps him politically because he's able to speak to his Trump voters and say that he did something for them. So, that might not be the ideal policy that everybody on the left wants, but if they do that, and again, he has to do this. Now, if we get to November and they've still done nothing and they're still fighting, then I will eat my words and say Joe Manchin, he screwed this up. But if they do that, if they come back and get a smaller, more tangible, easier to sell bill, like that to me seems like a win-win. And that should have been, by the way, the best Democrats could have hoped for when they started this term with a 50-50 Senate, where the crux vote was a guy who represents a state that Trump won by 70%. I mean, that's like the whole notion that this was going to be an FDR administration was ridiculous from the start. That was never going to be with a 50-50 Senate.
It was never going to be, and this is the problem of overpromising and of hubris. So, before we close out here, I just have to make a shout out, once again to Liz Cheney, who is I think every day that goes by, I am more impressed with her because of the contrast and that amazing scene yesterday. I mean, that was remarkable, where Dick Cheney comes to the floor of the House and joins his daughter, Dick Cheney, standing there. And they were the only Republicans in the entire chamber when they had the moment of silence. I mean, wow, what a remarkable moment that it's come to this. And of course, we did have people on the left say, no, 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 no alliance there, war criminal, blah, blah. Hey, do you want the coalition? Do you want a pro-democratic coalition or don't you? But it was quite a moment, Dick Cheney deciding that this was the day that he was going to speak out forcefully about the lack of leadership in the Republican Party.
What a picture that was. I have my own complaints of Dick Cheney too, but just that image of just the two of them, no one else in the House chamber going out there, really powerful. And yeah, to your point, like, look at Navalny, by the way, in Russia. This isn't, if you learned all of his positions, this is not a hero. There are no heroes sometimes in politics, right? Like no perfect heroes.
Never.
And I think flawed people that have made mistakes doing the right thing, we do still need to create an incentive structure that encourages people to do the right thing, even if they hadn't always, and that's what these guys are doing right now.
I think so. I actually did a podcast that won't be aired until next week with Rich Lowry, the editor of National Review. And one of the things that we disagreed very strongly about was Liz Cheney, and he's among those who think that she's making a mistake because, losing her position, she'd be in a much better position to shape the Republican Party.
Wait, no, really?
Had she stayed in leadership, by which she also means obviously that she had not spoken out. And this, of course, is the way that they rationalize silence and acquiescence. And I see Ben Dominic from the Federalist, John McCain's son-in-law, tweeting out, Liz Cheney seems okay with this irrelevant commission being the end of her family's relevant political career, and that seems rather unwise because relevance For people without any principles, I think relevance and clout are all that really matters. And they just don't understand. And yet I think that Liz Cheney has become more relevant, more influential by sticking to her guns than she would have been basically putting her head down, being groveling, and going along with
Yeah,
everything
why
that
did
they
I don't know
accept.
why didn't Liz Cheney do what Rich Lowry has done?
Well,
Charlie,
exactly.
I mean, that's just so ironic. It's just like I just don't get why Liz Cheney hasn't done what I've done, and clip my wings and not say some things from time to time in order to maintain my editorship. It's I mean,
Well,
it's like look at Paul Ryan, right? I mean, it's just like
Paul
really,
Ryan, yeah.
what do you want? Like you want to go away having done nothing, having achieved nothing, and then the inevitable comes. No, I totally agree, and I think that
Well,
you don't know what the future. Liz Cheney's
you
young.
don't know.
Liz Cheney's young. Doing the right thing is the right thing.
Well, I mean, he was snarking that, well, Liz Cheney is on a clear glide path to get a contract on CNN. Like, okay, obviously being a congressman is, much more important in leadership. See, this is part of the problem. I think that at the same time that we're watching the power in politics shifting radically, there are still people who say, if you don't keep your, pissant elective office, you're going to be completely irrelevant. You'll all become Jeff Flake has become the big boogeyman now. You're not relevant anymore. Well, I think the reality is very different. That I think a lot of members of Congress are realizing I'm not getting anything done here.
Right.
Particularly if I don't say anything that is not important. So there's a reason why we remember, Sir Thomas More and not all of the other bishops, right? Who we can't even name. It's because, okay, he became irrelevant by losing his job, right? But he took a stand. There's a reason why we remember Senator Margaret Chase Smith from the United States Senate, who spoke out against Joe McCarthy. Name other members of the Senate. Name committee chairmen from the early 1950s now. Who remembers them? So, this may seem
And the
naive,
other
but we are definitely going to be talking 30 years from now. People will still remember Liz Cheney and what she is doing more than whoever becomes the next Republican chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, right?
Nobody even wants that job now. I mean,
Right.
Devin Nunes is leaving that job to go work for a racist, social media company.
Yeah. So is he irrelevant? Irrelevant now?
No, and you don't hear Rich Lowry doing that. Going on and on about that. No, this is the thing I don't really understand, and that the next
Yes,
time
you
I have a
do.
beer with one of these guys, I'm going to try to get to the bottom of, which is, and maybe they don't care about this. Olivia talked about this on your pod on Wednesday, that Rudy doesn't care about his history. Rudy cares about his now,
Right.
and maybe that's true for most of these people. But no one can think that 50 years from now, people are going to look at that picture of the Confederate flag and the Trump flag above the Capitol and people storming the Capitol
Yep.
in order to
Mhm.
keep this reality TV show asshole in power, and his refusal to peacefully transfer. Nobody could possibly think that 50 years from now, people are going to look at that and there's going to be a what about the Black Lives Matter protests view. 50 years from now, there will be a consensus that this was one of the most horrible scenes from this part of our history. And the question will be why more people didn't stand up clearly. I see that as clearly as I see anything, right? It's hard to know what 10 years looks like. It's very easy to know what 50 years looks like. And I just don't understand why these guys don't see that.
I've thought about this as well. I mean, two possible explanations. One is the one that Olivia Nuzzi, gave about Rudy Giuliani, that he basically says, "Fuck my legacy." He just doesn't care. Okay, that's one. Maybe there's that mindset. The other is, I think a lot of these people figure, you know what? We're going to be the ones writing our own history books in our own media. We're going to be the ones who are going to determine the school curriculum, and that
Yeah.
picture ain't going to be there, man. So I don't know.
Maybe.
It is certainly possible. Tim Miller, welcome to 2022. Appreciate you being on the podcast. Have a great weekend.
So good to be here with you.
And thank you all for listening to today's Bulwark podcast. I'm Charlie Sykes. We will be back on Monday. We'll do this all over again.